The Building Brands Marketing Podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join me, Robert Breuer, president of Building Brands Marketing, and an entrepreneur who's successfully scaled multiple brands as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with a creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. Welcome to the Legal Leaders series of the Building Brands Podcast. I'm excited to welcome Kevin Hayslett today, partner at Carlson Meisner Hazlett Attorneys at Law. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Robert.
Hey, Kevin, let's start with your journey. So how did you go from joining the firm in 1991 to becoming such a driving force behind its growth and marketing transformation?
Well, I don't know who's saying I'm a driving force. I mean, there might be some people that say that. I think like most people out there that get into law and want to kind of expand their practice, they are understanding that when I started, the way that you got new business was who had the best yellow page ad. And things have kind of morphed since the early 90s to now. And if I said Chat GPT in 1992, people would know what I was talking about. But so I think the answer is that, like everything, we moved from yellow page driven. You kind of had some billboards driven. You had direct mail solicitation, the advent of the website and what that meant. We had to learn the term search engine optimization, and we didn't know what that meant at all. But right now, if you don't have an optimized website, and if you don't have Google reviews, and if you are not actively on something that is easily viewed on a handheld mobile device, you're like Osama bin Laden, as they say, because the reason we couldn't find him for 4 years is he was on page 2 of Google. And if you are not like that, and if you're not optimizing your law firm, if you don't understand that the purpose of practicing law is to get clients, and that you can be the best lawyer in the world, but if you don't have a client, it doesn't work out too well.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the page 2 thing. There's a dad joke in there that's similar that I recite sometimes. Well, Kevin, you mentioned something powerful to me in our discussion leading up to today's show, and it was the concept of, you can be this marketing company that practices law to be a super, super successful law firm, provided that you're really, really good at what you do in your core foundation of, service profile. Can you unpack that philosophy a little bit and tell me how it shapes your team's day to day?
Well, absolutely, Robert. I think and this is not a law issue. This is a physician issue. This is an accounting issue. This is a coffee shop issue. This is business 101, which is, listen, if you want to be successful, first of all, the public out there doesn't know the difference between a good lawyer and a great lawyer. They presume that everybody who's a lawyer is really of equal competence. No different than if you go into the hospital and you're told that you need to have an emergency surgery, if you need some sort of heart issue or you have something, your appendix taken out, you presume that that surgeon has that competence. You never ask that surgeon, where'd you go to med school? Where'd you go to undergrad? What was your GPA? No one asks those questions. So the issue is, how do you differentiate yourself from the noise out there? That is all the other lawyers that do what you do. And any lawyer out there who's honest, who's in their community, knows a lawyer in their community who's a great lawyer, but can't quite get there from a business standpoint. And it really needs to meld the two universes. That is someone who's really, really good at what they do with someone who's able to talk about that in a non-braggadocious way. And as I said to people, if you are good at what you do, and you do great jobs and great work for your clients, and no one knows what you do, it's like winking in the dark. You know you're doing, nobody else does. And you really need to be in a position to crow a little bit without being so self-serving and beating your chest that people know who you are. And there's a way to do that with humility. There's a way to do that, with some social proof, with reviews on Ava, with reviews on Google, reviews on Yelp. Encourage people who have a great experience you during that golden hour, that time when you pull them back from the abyss and you take them from doing 10 years in prison to paying a fine. That's the appropriate time to say, hey, Bill, hey, that was a great result. And I know you're happy and you're hugging me and you're crying. Your wife just made me some great apple pie. Do you mind putting that into words so that people can read about your experience? And it's one thing to talk about what happened, but what really speaks to people when they're hiring a lawyer or a doctor is the feelings that client has. How do you put that into feelings? Because we buy products based upon stories. Mm-hmm. When your clients become storytellers for you, they tell your story of competence. They tell your story of intensity. They tell your story of that you're never going to give up, and let them preach for you. That's the best way to do it, really.
Yeah. You know what makes social proof more reliable? When it doesn't come from you and it comes from the social community.
Yes.
Yes. It's a novice idea, right? It's interesting you say that, because I talk to so many, not just law firms, but so many service-based businesses that they're great at what they do, and they're scaling at a linear pace, not an exponential pace. And, they say, I've relied on referrals. Word of mouth marketing has always been my best thing. So what piece of advice do you give to the service-based business owner, maybe specifically law firms, who kind of still consider marketing an afterthought? They're just, hey, I'm going to get the referrals. I'm going to continue to use these word of mouth referrals.
I say Coca-Cola. And the reason I say Coca-Cola is it's a multi-billion-dollar business. Everybody knows Coke. If you went around the world right now, and they've done studies like this, and they said, what are the most recognized brands? McDonald's, KFC, Coca-Cola, Pepsi. And you would say, if you use that mindset, Robert, well, then they don't need to advertise anymore, because I know what Coke is. But why do they spend over $500 million in the USA alone reminding us to enjoy Coke? Because it's TOMA, top of mind awareness. And I don't care what you've done 2 years ago. And if someone came to me and say, listen, Kevin, I've got these referral sources, these 10 people that give me business, and I rely on them. And then I wait by my phone or by my laptop or by my phone, waiting, hoping and praying that they remember who I am. If that's one of the things you're going to do, first of all, you got to identify who those people are. Who are they? Is there 5 of them? Is there 10 of them? Is there 100 of them? There's 1,000 of them? Mm-hmm. How many are there? And the answer is, how many times are you touching them? And I'm not talking about in a criminal way where you get arrested. I'm talking about the standpoint of how many times are you emailing, text them? Hey, Bill, thanks again for your referral last week. Whatever the deal is. And I'll tell you, as a lawyer, one of the things you need to do is you need to take off your lawyer blinders, and you need to think like a businessman, because you're selling a product. You sell the sizzle, not the steak. You sell the emotion. You sell the problem solving. And I don't know if you've ever watched Gary Vee before. Gary Vee, he took over a wine store, and he tells a great story, exactly what you just said. He sells this deal, and this guy orders a very expensive bunch of wine from him. And he's like, this is awesome. This guy ordered this thing of wine, pretty good. And he told his staff to look, and he goes, find out what makes this guy tick. And he goes, well, he's a huge Packers fan. He's a huge Brett Favre fan. So Gary Vee orders a signed Brett Favre jersey, has it signed, and he sends it to this guy. And he sends it to the guy with a thank you so much for trying wines.com, wherever the company is. I appreciate business. The guy gets the thing of wine, or gets the jersey, Robert, and never says a thank you, ever. And Gary's like, listen, I spent $400. The wine he ordered was like, $600. I'm upside down in this deal. And then out of the blue, about 90 days later, he gets an order from another guy for $3,000 worth of wine. And the guy orders the wine, and with a note, he says, I can't believe these prices. The guy that he sent the jersey to sent it to him. He goes, I can't believe these prices. I'm going to use it going on. I love you. And by the way, I'm a huge Joe Montana fan. But my point is that you're out there, and even if you come to you, Robert, they come to me and they say, listen, I get my cases from referrals. What's going to make that referral remember you? I mean, at a minimum, send them a text. Maybe send them a coffee. Maybe send them to dinner. Send them something, but acknowledge them in some way that they remember you, and remember they get something good, positive feedback when they send you business.
Yeah, the thing is, my first inclination, like what I think in my head when someone tells me they get all their business from referrals, is if they say, hey, I don't do any marketing, I don't focus on marketing at all, I work all from word of mouth and referrals. My first inclination is, well, you're probably not closing as many referrals as you could be, because guess what? A lot of service-based business owners get the first touch point in the consumer journey is a referral many times. And then the first thing they do is they start to research that referral source. Okay, what are people saying about them on social media? What are they saying on Google? How legitimate do they look on the website? Do they have a board certification in this area, X, Y, or Z? So on and so forth. And all of that is middle of the funnel components, and that is marketing. I feel like a lot of people undervalue that part of it. Like, I know yourself, one of the things that I found fascinating in kind of researching you and the firm is you have thousands of videos, you run your own podcast, you're publishing content across multiple social platforms. Content obviously plays a role in not only your client acquisition, but brand loyalty. I'm curious, what is in terms of the stages of the marketing journey, what roles is that content filling a gap or a need right now for you?
First of all, there's no such thing as a silver bullet. There's not one thing out there that works. It's not one size fits all. The answer is, and I know someone in town, and I've had billboards in our area advertising criminal and DUI defense for 25 years. Part of the reason that I did that, and I read a book after the fact because I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know it was such a good idea. There's a great book out there that I think it's called Blue Waters. And it talks about the fact that you want to market or advertise in areas that there's not a lot of competition. Mm-hmm. Now, in most cities, if you do personal injury, putting a billboard up, at least in our town, you'd be one of 645,000. So me spending money on a personal injury, leaning billboard is going to be wasting money. But in my town, I was the only person that was advertising in outside media, a billboard for the criminal defense / DUI area. So I owned, if this was a military deal, I owned the airwaves. I literally owned the billboards because there was no one else there. And I've got people, and I stopped doing it about 8 months ago, but I did it for 25 years. People say, I saw your billboard yesterday. And I know one hasn't been up to 8 months, but their mind is thinking what they saw for so many times. But there's another lawyer in town that decided that they were going to do billboards, and they spent a lot of money, $25,000 a month for 6 months, and they didn't get any cases from it. And the answer is because you need to do it for 5 years. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. And I don't care if you're going to do TV, if you're going to do radio, if you're going to do print, if you're going to do an email drip campaign, if you're going to have videos out there. This is a commitment that you're making for the long period of time because there's nothing short time that's going to work. I'll tell you this, consistency always beats intensity. You can have the best video out there, but I can do a much inferior video, an inferior message, and I can do it for a long time, and people remember that, not the flashy one. And to follow up with that, but you don't have to do that much to do real well. And that's because the average person, and it doesn't matter if it's law, it doesn't matter if it's medicine, it doesn't matter what it is. The average person is worrying about their patient, their client, the court date, their mortgage, their kids, ballet, soccer, baseball, vacation, and they're not thinking about growing their business. And a lot of people think that investing in their business is a waste. And because of that, I'm happy, because it means there's not a lot of competition.
Yeah,
And it means that you got to do what, I've always argued this, but I've got two kids in the military. One went to West Point, one went to the Naval Academy. And one of the running jokes in our family is this, that you could give an F-16 and you can give the manual how to fly it to some pygmy tribe in South Africa. No offense to them, but so what? I can write you the perfect way to grow a law firm and exactly how to do it. And it's not going to make a difference because it's hard, and I can read books on how to run a sub 3-hour Boston Marathon, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do the work. and the hardest thing in the beginning of a 1,000-mile journey is that first step. You got to commit to doing something, and you've got to understand that I am planting crops today that are going to bear fruit a year from now, 2 years from now, from 3 years now. And delayed gratification, we know, if you look at all the studies, starting with kids in kindergarten, delayed gratification is a real difficult thing. And it's hard to do that. And I'm like, let me get this straight. If I go to the gym and have a great workout today, I'm not going to see results tomorrow. No, you're not. That's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for the average person. But those same rules and those tenets apply to legal brand marketing.
Well, I think there's also there's statistical evidence to the benefit of multiple brand touch points. And like you're talking about the consistency of over time committing to a marketing plan and staying the course on that, because we hear all this statistical evidence of studies of multiple touch points and that building more brand reputation, brand loyalty, so on and so forth. And then there's the second part of it, which is the messaging part of what you put in there. Just putting it out there isn't as useful if it doesn't have the right message. Like y'all's headline on the website, hero image, big and bold. As soon as you hit the website, it's results matter, the highest rated law firm on the west coast of Florida. That is a very pointed, specific message. And it's very intentional, right? So market message a lot of times is just that. Just having the medium or the platform is not useful in and of itself. How do you approach balancing informative content with entertaining or relatable content to avoid just being another lawyer talking law and just making content to make content?
The answer is you make mistakes. You got to go out there and start making a lot of mistakes. The sooner you can start really putting bad content to realize how bad it is, so you recognize good content, that's what you got to do. I've been doing videos for 20 some odd years. If I was a country writer, I would say I was video when video was uncool. And that's because my first videos are horrible. I look back at them now and I cringe. They were so bad. I look at the early ones, I go, what was I thinking? It's so funny because I was using really bad green screens. They were just horrible. And I was reminded by Eminem, who I'm certainly not saying I'm like Eminem because I can't sing, I can't rap, can't do anything. But my point is, he said this argument. He goes, I can't listen to my first albums because they were so bad. Yeah. But he can't, or any artist or any person, and I'm not saying an artist, and I'm not saying my content's good, but I'm saying it's a whole lot better than what it was. And I learned the hard way. I'm like, what do you mean no one cares about what I'm saying? I'm giving great advice. Well, there's an entertainment factor. You have to message. We always hear content's king, but unless I'm going to engage that person, and right now, people are doom scrolling every day. If you don't grab them in about a second, they're right by. You've got to hit them with something that they're going to go, what? Wait, what's this? And I try, and I've changed my format. I bring in relevant topics. I try to bring real life scenarios on all my social media stuff. I'm probably excessive. I post in 5 platforms 5 times every day, 5 days a week. So every day on Facebook, every day on Instagram, every day on TikTok, every day on YouTube. I'm doing a short, I'm doing a story. Every day there's a new video going out, every single day, every week. That's how it is. It never stops. Now, I will go back and I track them to find out, well, why did this one do good? And every once in a while, one will pop and I'll go, oh my gosh, this got 100,000 views. Why did this one get 100,000 views? I didn't think it was that good. You know, I'm reminded of Bono when they won Best Record for Beautiful Day, and he got up on stage, he goes, I hate this song. This is my worst one. You know, because as the creator, he thought it sucked, but the public loved it. So sometimes us as lawyers or us as folks that literally want to put good content out there, we go, well, this is bad. And it turns out to be American Pie. And you go, and the rest is history. So you just never know until you do it. And then if it catches fire, because I've had a couple that will get a lot of views. I mean, a couple 100,000, you know, and then those people are sharing them. And I'm trying to remember, what does it cost for me when someone shares a video? Oh, that's right, nothing. Doesn't cost me anything, you know. So people are sending my message out at no cost to me, and it works great. And then does it mean I'm in a case? Maybe yes, maybe no. Sometimes nothing. But I've gotten cases from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, from all those platforms. And those are people, when they have heard you for so long, you're hitting those 3 things you have to hit, which is called know, like, and trust. If a client doesn't know, like, and trust you, they will scroll on by and go to the next person. I feel like a preacher, and I'm preaching to the choir, Robert. You're shaking your head because you know what I'm saying. Know, like, and trust. If you don't know, like, and trust, and the answer is, if they know you a little bit more than someone else, they'll pick you. You know, but all the stars got to align. I mean, they can know, like, and trust you, but listen, if you got a Google review score of a 3.8, that's not going to help you. You got to do all these things, and you got to do in concert, and you can't just do one well. You got to do all of them well, but you got to work, again, consistently, not intensively.
Yeah, imagine that. People want to do business with people they like and people they know are capable of serving their needs. It's really not rocket science. What's the one marketing strategy, Kevin, that you think is most underrated right now for law firms?
I'll say it again, consistency. The answer is you buy into this is what's going to work, and you just don't stop. You just don't stop. I mean, I will tell you, delayed gratification always works. I believe in simple, boring methods. Block and tackle. It's not that complicated. Eat less, exercise more. I mean, if you break things down in the world, it's never that complicated. There's no secret sauce. It's doing the little things well. You know, if you're not doing the little things well, you're always going to fail. You don't return phone calls, guess what? You're going to fail. Yeah. You know, if you're rude to your clients, you're going to fail. If you don't give them more than they deserve, you're going to fail. You know, you want to give them more value. And they recognize that when you go the extra mile. They recognize that when you don't charge them for something that doesn't take you a lot of time. And I give away a lot of free stuff because I know it comes back to me. And I will tell you, the crazy thing is, the more I erred on the side of doing more for no money, my return is 30x. Let me say that again. The more times I've done, I said, no, I'll just handle that for nothing. Oh, you got a couple speeding tickets. Let me go just take care of those for you. I'm not going to charge you anything. If you give me a Google review, I appreciate it. If not, don't worry about it. You're not charging me? No, I got you. Now, I could have charged them the going rate. Here's what, $199. But if I charge you $199, are you going to remember that? Even if I got a great result? I said, Robert, I got you this time. Just remember me. And I'll tell you, this is the, you know, you do those things, and I can point to cases where that happened, where all of a sudden there was a big issue, and they had the choice of everybody in town or everybody in Florida. And certainly I've had some cases that got international news where they could have picked any lawyer in the country, and they picked know, like, and trust because they felt that, and you got to walk the walk, that you provide value and you're doing it because you hold, you know, your service to them paramount.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I actually just got off a podcast earlier today where the guest was asking me for a simple marketing favor. And I did exactly that. And I said, hey, you don't have to pay me a dime for this. And the value that came from that, well, what happened was actually just prior to jumping on this podcast with you, that same podcast guest, which is not a client of mine, they're just a categorical leader in the industry. They emailed me right prior to jumping on this podcast and actually asked me about booking a consultation for a completely unrelated marketing issue. This is in real time within 24 hours. This is from this morning to this afternoon by me providing that one little favor, which actually I haven't even completed yet. I just agreed in advance to do it for them complimentary. Now they're already following up within 24 hours for an appointment. And that really is I mean, that's a huge point that you make there, because the thing is with service-based businesses that work billable time, we're always thinking, well, by the very nature, as the managers and operators of those businesses, we're focused on utilization rate and billable utilization time, because naturally that is, I'm not saying that's not important, but it is something that we should monitor to be sure that our businesses are profitable, so on and so forth. However, it's not the end all be all. And simple touch points like that not only drive a lot of like good faith, goodwill, but it also drives a lot of value. If I perform one small function for a prospective client or current client, and I can showcase my skills and ability, guess what? That trust factor of know, like, and trust just got elevated exponentially. And guess what? They probably like me a little bit more now. Because I just did something, out of goodwill, good faith, and we generally like people that do things out of goodwill, good faith. So I love that you're, where you're going with that. Kevin, one of the things about you that's absolutely fascinating to me is you are not the norm. As simple as some of the things you are saying sound, you are not the norm. You may not know it, but I know it because I talk to a lot of lawyers and I talk to a lot of lawyers about marketing. You built a marketing engine that most law firms dream of. They're not able to take a step back and think at this level, not because they aren't talented, not because they don't teach business, business 101 in law school. It's a lot of times it's because in this business and all service-based businesses, it's very easy to get caught in the weeds and constantly stay busy with busy work because there's always work to do most of the time. So I'm sure it hasn't all been rainbows and unicorns for you. What's the one lesson or mistake you've learned along the way, the hard way?
Hard lesson is this. I never will hire third-party people to do things for me because I want to do it myself. Let me explain what I mean by that. Every time I've tried to get into a service, like who says, we're going to develop TV ads for you, and we're going to find them, we're going to do them, or just companies that provide a service, I want to do it myself because every time I've done that, the cost has been high and the reward has been low. So I have found, for example, in videos, you got the ability with your iPhone right now to do your own videos. In fact, sticking a camera up above your head, doing it every day, putting that content out there that feels real raw and real, that works. And I spent money early on, a lot of times people doing things that that I paid for, and I never got a good service from it. I've got virtual assistants in another country that I use right now. There's a lot of companies that will offer that for you, but I hired my own. I found my own. I trained my own. I do my own. The delta between that, I saved so much money, but I made a lot of mistakes. I hired people that had 3 jobs and did a horrible job for me. I had to fire a lot and hire some more. But I learned from doing that. You learn from making mistakes. You talk to anybody out there who's done anything, they say your mistakes are what make you successful. And that's why we have WD-40, not WD-39, because it took a lot to get it right. And the other thing I would tell you is that don't be afraid to circle back what I said earlier, to add value to your clients, to give them more than they expect. Because when you do that, they're like, no one does that. And that cuts, and that's the difference between you and other people. I'm reminded of and I'm drinking a Chick-fil-A tea because I live on the tea. And I'm reminded of how Chick-fil-A went from 14 to 3 in fast food restaurants in less than a decade. And one of the things they talked about is they've got, if you've gone to Chick-fil-A where you live and you sit inside, they'll have someone that looks like your grandmother or your grandfather will come around and refill your tea or your Coke or whatever you're drinking. And I'm thinking to myself as a business person, I go, that's a dumb idea. They want to turn these seats as fast as they can. That person's now taking their time sitting in the restaurant, soaking up the free AC, enjoying the spotless bathroom. I mean, not like a Buc-ee's bathroom, but pretty close. And they're really enjoying that. And but someone, I watched one of the CEO talk about that, and they go, we were kind of divided on that. But we realized when we provided that service, my pleasure, call you by your name, refill your beverage, even though it costs them more money and takes more time, that it builds the know, like, and trust with their clients who now even they can't wait for Sunday to get over so they can get a chicken biscuit on Monday from Chick-fil-A, go inside, have a sweet tea, and have some refill for them because no one else is doing that for them. And you take that same concept, and I've argued all the time with the folks that live here in my law firm, by other lawyers and partners, when I explain to them, as I explained to you earlier, we are not a law firm. We are a marketing company that happens to have lawyers that practice law. And we are a marketing company first. If we don't understand that, then we're not getting it. And it's okay to do nice things for our clients. Have a nice office that we like to come to that the client would be impressed with. If I'm going to charge what I think is a pretty high fee, I want my client to go, oh my gosh, these people, they've got it going on. It looks like they can fulfill the bill here. And when they come up there, I want my receptionist to say, hi, Robert, Mr. Hayslett will be with you shortly. Can I get you something to drink? What does it cost a bottle of water at Costco? What does it cost to have a napkin that says Royer and Associates on it? What does it cost to have a smile? What does it cost to good to see you again? What does it cost to have your legal assistant who sits at the front desk know the clients are coming in that day so they can greet them by their first name? It doesn't cost you much. What does it cost for me, for every client that comes to this office, who retains this, gets a handwritten note, welcome to the firm family? You know how many times I get someone called back and goes, no one does that.
Yeah.
Reminds me of my grandmother. I go, that's intentional, and you probably won't forget it, will you? I'll never forget. That's amazing. Now, does it cost me money? Yeah. Does it take time? Yeah. Is it a pain? Yeah. Does it work? Yeah. Have I stopped doing it? No. But, my question is, how do you build on that? How do I make that better?
So there's a lot to unravel there.
Sorry, I got on this soliloquy.
I was looking backwards.
I'm way up on the soapbox. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unravel there, and I was looking backwards, not because I was distracted, but because my first W-2 job, and I have to say W-2 job, was at Chick-fil-A. And actually, my first management position, leadership position I ever had was also with Chick-fil-A. And I have a leadership book, actually, that was written by Truett Cathy, and I was seeing if it was on the bookcase behind me. I'm a huge believer in the Chick-fil-A business model. Needless to say, why I worked there for a couple of years. But probably if I would have stuck with it, I would own 3 or 4 Chick-fil-A's right now and be rolling in there.
And you would be doing this silly podcast with me. I understand. I get that.
Yeah. I decided to go a different path, though. But anyway, with that being said, the reason I touch base on all that is, there's a customer service component to what you mentioned. And then there was another thing that you mentioned in that, just really, really quickly in passing. And it's the idea that some of these customer touch points or prospect touch points are so minimal in terms of effort. Really, they're very, in some cases, 20-second tasks, 2-second tasks. Can I get you something to drink? They may decline half the time, but it took you 2 seconds to ask that. It's the equivalent of what I preach all the time to my staff in terms of client acknowledgement is when you walk in that restaurant and that hostess makes eye contact right away and tells you, I will be with you in just a minute, welcome, something along those lines. That is a total different experience compared to when you walk in and you wait for 5 minutes and nobody greets you. You can wait for 5 minutes in scenario A, and it's a much better customer experience, right? These are all small little touch points that are very small, intentional touch points across the consumer journey that are highly useful. When you talk about the idea of, hey, it doesn't cost much money to do X, Y, and Z. There's a CPA firm that I started working with. This is at the infancy days of Building Brands Marketing. It was in our first year in business, and they were probably the most established CPA firm in about a 60-mile radius. They had been in existence for 25 years-ish or plus, and probably more than that actually, but very well established. And it was a big decision for them to do any form of marketing because they never did anything besides word of mouth and referral-based marketing other than the fact they had a website. That was the only thing, and a Google profile, I think. The Google profile had one review on it. And anyway, the pitch was about $1,000 a month in terms of marketing. It wasn't a very comprehensive campaign. It was a simple campaign, but it was a good starting point for a firm like that. And I'll never forget the words. The managing partner, looked at his other partners once he finally got the proposal from me, and I think he thought it was going to come in very, very high and was shocked at $1,000 a month. I'm trying to survive in the beginning days, didn't understand the value and everything yet. And he said, we spend more than that monthly on snacks in the office. And he said, this is a no-brainer. And I was thinking, oh man, that was an easy pitch. I should have gone, I should have been a little bit more robust with my approach and everything. However, the point was this. They waited 25 years to do any type of marketing because they were afraid of what was going to happen, that they would get too many leads, too much work, something they couldn't handle, and it would decline their quality of service. Over the next few years, they drastically increased lead flow and client flow. And had they done that sooner, there's no telling what would have happened. That managing partner is now deceased, unfortunately. God rest his soul. However, there's no telling what would have happened if they started that sooner compared to later on. And it's because of the uncertainty sometimes. And sometimes in business, you just have to make the move, and figure it out. You just have to make the move and move that, chess piece. So I love what you're talking about here, Kevin. Is there any other final words of advice you would give? Maybe not just other lawyers, other marketing executives, but other entrepreneurs trying to build and establish a service-based brand.
Yeah, I think the adage that I invest in some real estate too, and I started, and I'm reminded of that adage. When's the best time to plant an oak tree? The answer is 25 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. And most lawyers will sit around and talk about doing something, but they never do anything. And you are better to have a bad plan than no plan. You're better to have a bad video than no video. You're better to have a poorly written thank you for hiring me note than having no note. You're better off to have, there's so many things you can do, but you just have got to start. And you've got to commit to it. And you need to commit to it really for a year. And you need to do it with purpose, and you need to be aware of your surroundings and from the standpoint of what's working, not working. But you just have got to start. I can't tell you how many people have said, oh, I saw your video. I'm going to do that someday. It's a wonderful place, this place called Someday Isle. It's this island out there where people are going to go someday. Someday I'll get to my kids' recital. Someday I'll start saving for retirement. Someday I'll start marketing my law firm. And the message I would tell you is start today, even if you screw it up, because it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, we don't learn unless we're doing things that are uncomfortable. I tell my boys, I got 3 boys, absolutely. I go, do uncomfortable things. Do things that you're not comfortable doing that's a stretch. If you're not stretching, you're not growing. And you got to grow. Otherwise, you're going to get the same thing you've always gotten. And the answer is, why, if I'm putting in mediocre input, would I expect extraordinary results? And most things we do is also a lot harder than we think, but you got to get into the arena. If you're not in the arena, it's not going to work. And you know what? I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful there's so many lawyers out there that are happy to go home early, put on Netflix, not market, not advertise, because it's wide open, blue waters for me.
Absolutely. Kevin, you've been a wealth of knowledge. This has been a great conversation. Where can we
How about that, Robert?
where can we find your firm?
You can go to www.carlsonmeisner.com. Partner of Carlson Meisner Hazlett. We've been around over 50 years, represented over 250,000 clients. Most Google reviews, 5-star of anybody that's on the west coast of Florida that does work. We don't have as many lawyers as Morgan & Morgan. Our firm, you talk to a real lawyer when you have a PI claim, talk to and deal with beginning to end. We believe in person. We give our cell phone number to every one of our time because we think that it needs to be personal and they need to know us. And like the more they trust us and they tell their friends. And if you have an issue, give us.
Yeah, Kevin, we used to have a radio commercial and it was Google us. So simple and easy. Didn't put a website in there, a phone number. You know, Kevin, this has been great. If you enjoyed this today, Building Brands podcast, Kevin's a wealth of knowledge in the marketing world of legal marketing. I would encourage you to follow him online as well. I can tell you that this man knows what he's talking about. Kevin, it's been a privilege to have you on the show. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Robert.